Okay, all right. Make sure that you have your chapter 2 notes with you. Okay. So in this particular chapter, we will cover two things. Okay, the first is diffusion. Second is osmosis. Okay, now some everyday examples of diffusion. Okay, so I'm sure some of you have a perfume at home. Okay, so if you spray the perfume right into the air, okay, eventually the smell right is gonna reach the other part of the house. Okay, now why is this possible? Okay, it's because of diffusion. Okay, so what is diffusion? Okay, so all matter is made up of particles. Okay, be it atoms, molecules, or ions. Okay, and those particles they actually move around randomly in terms of direction. Okay, and this actually allows for diffusion. Okay, diffusion is the net movement of particles, okay, from a region of higher concentration to a region of lower concentration down a concentration gradient. Okay, now let me emphasize on a few terms here. Net. Okay, it's not just movement of particles. It is the net movement of particles. Okay, I will explain what net movement means later. Okay, and it must be from a region of higher concentration of the particle to a region of lower concentration. Okay, and this means from higher to lower means down a concentration gradient. Okay, the keyword here is down. Okay. Okay, now, what do I mean by concentration gradient? Concentration gradient is the difference in concentration between two regions. Okay, so for example, if I spray the perfume at the front of the classroom, right? The front of the classroom will have a high concentration of the perfume particle. Okay, whereas the other side of the room, okay, will have low concentration. So what we have here is a concentration gradient. So concentration gradient is the difference in concentration between two regions. Okay, so from point A and point B. Okay, there is a difference in concentration. Okay, and when there is a difference in concentration gradient, diffusion is possible. So we can have particles moving from a region of higher concentration to a region of lower concentration, down the concentration gradient. Okay, just like a person sliding down the slide of the playground. Okay, always go down here. Okay, now if you are talking about at the particle level, right, why is diffusion possible? Okay, suppose that one of these dot here, one of these blue dot here is the perfume particle. Okay, now the perfume particle, it doesn't have a brain. Okay, it can either go up, right, down, or left. And the direction that it chooses is totally random. So imagine if you apply this concept across all the dots here, okay, eventually you're going to have maybe 10 particles that will go up, 10 particles that will go right, 10 particles that will go down, and 10 particles that will go left. So eventually you will have particles evenly spread out across the room. All right. Okay, now, what is the concentration gradient? Okay, so over here, okay, we have a partially permeable membrane and two different compartments. Okay, but in compartment B, you have more salt particles. Okay, so compartment B here is more concentrated. Okay, now, which net direction do you think the salt molecules will move towards? Now, they will be, okay, movement of particles from left to right. They will be, okay, but it is a little bit only. Okay, it is not a lot. Okay, on the other hand, since compartment B here has more salt particles, there will be more movement of salt from the right hand side here to the left hand side. Okay, so the movement of particles from B to A is a lot more compared to the number of particles that is moving from A to B. So what we have here is, eventually if you minus it out, okay, you have a little bit more particles moving from B to A. And this is what we call net direction. Okay, so there is a movement, okay, there is a net movement of particles from B to A. Okay, because overall there will be more movement in that particular direction. Okay, so there is a net movement of particles from B to A. Okay, and it will continue to do so until both the concentrations of A and B are equal. Okay, so suppose there are 20 here, and then there are 10 particles in A. Okay, there will be a net movement of particles from B to A until both sides each have about 10 particles. Okay, and then equilibrium is reached, and no more net movement of particles will occur. Okay, so another example. Okay, on the left hand side here, we have a lot of potassium nitrate. On the right hand side, you have a lot of copper sulfate. Okay, so in terms of the net movement of copper sulfate, okay, there will be a net movement of copper sulfate from right to left. Okay, whereas since potassium nitrate is higher on the left hand side, okay, there will be a net movement of potassium nitrate, okay, from the left to the right. Okay, so again, I would like to emphasize on the term net movement. Okay, means overall there is more movement on a particular direction. Okay, next you may need to refer to your notes. Okay, so I believe this is on page 2, I think. Okay, you need to refer to the template. Okay, so this is template 1. Okay, suppose we have this particular situation here. Okay, side A has more particles, more iodine particles than side B. Now, when you describe and explain, okay, the net movement of particles, you need to use certain key terms. Okay, and there is suggested flow, okay, to the description. Okay, so for example, over here in step 1, okay, the first thing that you should describe is compare the concentration of particles between the two regions. So over here it is clear cut. Okay, side A has more iodine particles. So the first step that you should state is A, okay, has a higher concentration of iodine particles. Okay, you need to name the particle. What kind of particle is it? Okay, in this case, it is iodine. Okay, compared to B. Step number 2, you state the net movement of particles. Okay, so there is a net movement of iodine particles. Okay, and in which direction? Okay, from A, okay, to B in this case. Okay, and you need to state the process in the last step by diffusion. Okay, so taken together, okay, your description and explanation will be, okay, A has a higher concentration of iodine particles than compartment B. There is a net movement of iodine particles from A to B, okay, by diffusion. Okay, so if you follow this sequence of description, you will not go wrong. Okay, let's look at another example. Another example is different. A and B has equal number of particles. So they both have equal concentration of iodine particles. Okay, so how would you describe this? Okay, when there is no... Okay, so how would you describe this? Okay, first and foremost, compare concentration of particles of two regions. Okay, so in this case, compartment A has the same concentration of iodine particles as B. There is no net movement of iodine particles between A and B. Okay, by diffusion. Okay, that is how you should describe it. Okay, so make it a habit, okay, to first compare the concentration between two compartments. Next step, state the net movement of the particles, okay, in which direction it will occur. Okay, and lastly, state the process. Okay, so a checkpoint, okay. Okay, so I will post this checkpoint in Google form. Okay, I hope you will do it. Okay, I want to see everyone submit it. All right.